very special guest, Stuart Tully. He is president and CEO of Sandstone Group and podcaster, the famous podcaster in the world in the energy. Yeah, he is really out, out, out of any comments. Spectacular. Good morning. It's a pleasure, my guru,
Oh,
Stuart.
Armando, thank you so much for your time. I just really appreciate you and your efforts as an industry thought leader. You're knocking it out of the park. And you with the energy transition and your other ones. I tried to listen to some of yours, but they were in Portuguese, I believe. I could not understand it.
Yeah, I need to make a translation to English with legends. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's a good. Stuart, please let me share a very interesting picture showing the quantity, the number of international sanctions imposed by the UN and
Right.
EU and United States. So 13,000 different sanctions, something crazy. And here is a list of sanctions. I will not read, of course, and the letter is so small,
Hey,
the font. But
Armando, I got a document of all the sanctions.
oh my God, you have
And so I
this.
was going through them, and some of them are just as nutty as you could possibly imagine. Um, that is nuts. So when you take a look at Iran and the sanctions on Iran versus 13,000, that's crazy. The sanctions started with the Obama administration. I did not realize that in the first rounds, Obama started them. And then we had the fourth round. And then in the United States, we come down, we're in the 12th round of sanctions on Russia. And you know what's sad? Sanctions don't work.
But Stuart, how much effort is necessary to maintain the group of people taking care of sanctions, administrating sanctions? Something crazy.
Oh, it is. And when you take a look at how the sanctions were brought on in 2022, they actually sanctioned the tanker insurance agencies. And so when you go take a look, most of the tankers are insured for their cargoes and their shipping from the UK. Guess what's happening, Armando? BRICS is now kicking in.
Yeah,
People are now trading other than the petrodollar. Guess what else is happening? We
yes.
also are seeing China, India, and others creating their own insurance companies, and they're bypassing the sanctions. You over weaponize any sanction from the UN, the dollar, people go away from sanctions. Sanctions can only work for a very short period of time. And then guess who they hurt? Irina Slav says this all the time.
She says,
They only get the consumer. And as
yeah,
I always say, in a drive-through, they always get you in a drive-through when they don't put in the hamburger or the French fries or something. So I always say the consumers get it in the drive-through. When they drive away, they don't have half their food.
yeah, that's right. But Stuart, imagine that we can remove all sanctions one time. What can happen with the world? Is better
A,
to the world.
a couple different things. If you remove the sanctions, not much would change right now. And the reason for that is the ball has already been put in place. It is now moving. You have the inertia going to BRICS. You have the inertia going to BRICS Plus. You have the Iran actually taught Russia how to avoid sanctions. And then Russia, Putin was over here going, hey, that's a good trick. And then they notched it up and even bypassed. how Iran was avoiding sanctions. So the mechanisms are in place, Armando. I love your thought. I do love your thought. If you wiped out sanctions right now, what would change? Not much. The
Interesting.
ball is already rolling.
How long you see that can take, let's see, attenuation of this effect?
Um,
Years.
yeah, oh yeah, years. I think that. Do you remember when the British sterling pound was the world's currency, and then it lost favor, and then I believe it was, I right after that, then the petrodollar started coming in. I have to look at those dates, but England is still around, and they're still an important person, but they lost a huge chunk. I think you're going to see the U.S. dollar currency change. Now, this is about sanctions.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
all it all feeds into the same thing. And I loved your discussion of what happened if we did not have the war, right? I
Yeah,
think
right.
there's two different questions that come up in the play on that question, Armando.
Yeah, that's right.
If we didn't have the war, the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2, they can pump out 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas each.
Yes,
That's a
three times Brazilian production.
yes. And so they can pump that out at that time. At the moment that it was destroyed, only three of the four pipelines, because the Nord Stream 1 has two, Nord Stream 2 has two, and one of those pipelines is still capable of working. So
By the
they,
interior of Ukraine, no? I suppose it's not by sea, but by the land of Ukraine. This
oh no,
pipeline.
there's a list of, let me get the list. I have them right here. In the Nord Stream 1 through the Baltic Sea,
Yeah.
still has one pipeline for 22.5 billion cubic meters of gas a year is still capable, but it's not functioning.
Wow.
And so the answer is, if you remove sanctions and the war did not happen, you would have the 110 billion cubic meters of gas available for Europe. Now, Spain is the number one LNG importer with all of their LNG facilities, their regasification plants, and everything else.
From the United States and Qatar.
Yes. And so they're buying it all from Qatar and the United States. But Asia is going to kick in and they're stealing some of these. So, why are we seeing such long LNG contracts coming up, Armando? We're seeing those because energy security. And people are afraid of what happened in Russia. I mean, in Germany. Europe played a bad gamble. They were a bad gambler. In Brazil, do you have casinos?
No, not yet. They are approving this kind of place. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll be down in a minute. But the EU actually did not do a good job gambling. They said, "Oh, natural gas is so cheap." They didn't have any long-term contracts. I don't. I've got a few other opinions on why the war started, but that I don't know if you want me saying that publicly.
Much better in private communication.
Yes. And so when you take a look at the worldwide structure, what we have, um, OPEC demand expects global oil demand and energy demand up by 23% by 2024,
Today
2045.
is 100 million barrels a day, so increased to 120. Wow, my God.
That's a lot. And when you take a look in the last 40 years, I believe it's 40, I need to fact check myself. But for the renewable, we've spent $5 trillion on renewable energy. We have only moved the bar 2%.
Wow.
2%, 98% of the world's energy is coal, oil, gas. 98%. We've only reduced it 2%, $5 trillion. Armando, do you know what we could do with $5 trillion in Africa? We could have brought energy to so many people that are energy poverty. This drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's right. And Stuart, and the mining process that are increasing a lot, duplicating, or because this 2% of the energy of renewables.
Absolutely, Armando. And so some of the sanctions are actually so worthless. Even Putin sanctioned Biden, I think, or he sanctioned the Biden. So, sanctions are a joke. It would be like me telling you, I'm going to charge you $5 for every video that you do. How am I going to collect on that? Right?
Right.
Sanctions don't work. Now, the political mess there was when Biden kind of almost hinted that he would approve. He said, I believe the quote, and I always need to fact check myself because I went to Oklahoma State University. It was a bunch of cows and everything else. Is that when somebody asked him about, he removed sanctions on the Nordstream pipeline ship. So he actually approved the Nordstream completion. So here's the thing on that. Then somebody, I believe it was 2 months after that, asked him and said, how do you know that the Germany will not get the Nordstream online? And he says, I have no doubt we have ways of making sure. And then sure enough, and all of a sudden it's blown up. And there are so many theories about who blew up that.
Who did?
And Putin, who I do, Irina gets really tickled every time I do a Putin imitation. She goes, "You're a lousy Putin imitator." Yeah. But I sound more like a mob boss. But Russia or Ukraine or Russia was saying the Ukrainians did it. Okay, they did it with a sailboat, right? You can't get there. Impossible. Putin asked, why would I blow up my own pipeline?
Sure.
Because I can blow up the head of it right here and, nobody's going to use it. And then Biden goes, yeah, we can take care of that. And so I don't have any but there's a lot of controversy out there.
And so Stuart, who received the benefits of this, let's see, problem with Nord Stream? The exporters? United States. LNG.
Now, Armando, they don't approve renewables. They don't approve new LNG facilities. They don't approve any of these things. So we have the climate activists who are not interested in getting energy poverty solved. We have the politicians not wanting to get it done. They're creating rules that are against all energy, not only oil and gas, it's renewables. It is the most confounded thing I've ever seen. How do you say stupid in Portuguese?
Estúpido. Only the letter O is different. The same.
It's the same thing almost in Spanish as well, too.
Yes.
Esta Biden administration es muy estúpido. So You know,
But
it's
Stuart, tell me your perception. What's the probability between 0 and 100? The sanctions can be removed. Every sanction. You see something? No.
they're too stupid. I'm going to be just flat honest. They don't care about the consumer. They don't understand sanctions. Sanctions are important. Let's take the Iranian sanctions for a moment. The sanctions against Iran were to stop them from building a nuclear bomb.
Okay. Yeah.
Guess what they have? 2 months ago, they said that we're 2 days away from creating enough fission material to create a nuclear bomb.
Wow.
So,
Dangerous.
did any sanctions work against Iran? Not a single sanction. What has happened to the price of energy because of all the sanctions on the insurance carriers of London? The Dark Fleet showed up. The Dark Fleet, Russia and several other countries were buying the old tankers.
India, for example.
Oh, yes. And so with those dark tankers, India has been buying all the Russian oil they can get.
And reselling to United States.
Yes. And so Russian oil is going to Spain. It's being refined. And then the Northeast United States is buying refined products. Refined products are not sanctioned from Spain. Russia is still making their money off of their dollar. Now, the Brent showed up this morning. I believe it was 84. I need to double check. The US WTI was coming up around, I believe, $80.
80 something, yeah.
And so when you take a look at that, the EU, Armando, when did they put in the $60 sanction deal for Russian oil? He was already selling it below that to India and China.
So you mean that some groups or the government, I don't know, are maintaining this situation, this, let's see, cross understanding to make money?
Yes. And so India, in fact, the Northeast United States has been buying LNG from Russia, Trinidad, and Qatar.
Wow. And making LNG to export?
They buy it in. The upper eastern corner of the United States has an LNG facility a regasification that imports LNG from those three countries. And they have the second biggest natural gas field sitting in the Marcellus formation, 1-day drive. They could drop a pipeline in there and get rid of all their energy costs. Mm-hmm. Energy in the United States is buying from Russian sanctioned products.
And Stuart, is some kind of contamination for ships, electronic ships, with China. So it's a matter of a big problem because China has, let's see, mining of rare earths and metals.
Exactly.
And the United States depends on this material. And how does it work?
Well, that's almost a different little question, but let me throw this squirrel. They have squirrels in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. But I'm going to throw this squirrel. We have a saying in Oklahoma is that if you get a squirrel in your engine, it doesn't work. So I'm going to throw this at you. There's now $37 billion worth of orders for LNG tankers. So you have those new contracts that we've talked about, that you've been talking on, that are now in with China and Qatar, and for 20 plus year contracts for LNG. the LNG, who would put millions and billions of dollars into LNG carriers if there wasn't a long-term profit?
Is that gas
So
enough?
think about do what?
Is there are there gas, natural gas enough to make these exports a long time
Oh, absolutely, there is, and
from
the
fracking?
U.S. Yes, and there is enough. And then you have Shell and BP and Exxon. Guess what? Africa is the next big growth where all their capex is now going. Their capital expenditures is going to Africa. Armando, this is where I get really upset. They're taking African natural resources and taking it away from Africa. They're making money on it. And then we're selling higher cost renewable energy to Africa. We're loaning the money to them through the World Economic Forum. I mean, the World International Bank at a higher interest rate. We're then charging them. China's putting in nuclear, is now selling nuclear reactors, and it's taking advantage of Africa. And guess what? It's all because of sanctions. You nailed it when you were asking about sanctions. I'm sorry. Everything feeds back to sanctions and people not wanting to take care of energy poverty.
Yeah, interesting. And sure, the amount of money United States is applying in Ukraine to send material and war material. Why?
Um, Without
You
getting
cannot.
your show banned, I don't want to go into it, but I will tell you what other people said. And I have heard that I don't like Putin. I want that to be known. I don't approve of it, of what
Yeah,
he's doing.
yeah,
But he is concerned about NATO invading him.
yes,
And everything that I'm seeing, and well, excuse me, what other people are saying is that why Putin and Zelensky were ready to sign a peace deal.
mm,
NATO and the US stopped it.
wow,
I'm sorry, that's a fact. So I think we should give no more money to Ukraine and support signing a peace deal.
sure. So clear, so clear.
And guess who wins?
Yeah,
Everybody.
everybody. Yeah, is a kind of remove the war, reconstruct the pipeline, Nordstream pipelines, and then remove sanctions, and so it's a new world. Why not?
You have to also think, Armando, under the sanctions, that who else, you asked me who benefited from the Nord Stream blowing up?
Yeah.
Norway as well.
Oh,
Several years ago, Norway was shutting down their oil and gas fields. And Norway has a lot. I love Norway. Don't give me fantastic. You have Fryer Battery up there. They have lots of hydroelectric. They
yeah.
export a lot of their energy, their electricity around. Love Norway.
They are
But
innovators, and so
uh, do what?
innovators.
Oh,
They
I love it.
innovate a lot.
Absolutely.
They are
I
very.
just you can tell when I'm talking about Norway, I just kind of light up and I go, I want to go see Brazil, Norway. I need to be traveling around.
Yeah.
But Norway has 8 different pipelines from their natural gas fields, which a lot of folks have not talked about. They picked up, I believe, I have to fact check, but it was a significant amount, maybe even up to 10% of what Russia was supplying. It was a huge impact. They have 2 ports that drop off in the UK. or excuse me, two different sections. Part of it comes from the North Sea, and others come from there on land, and then they fan out to six others on the continent in the U.S. I mean, in Europe.
Mhm.
They picked up a lot of the slack. So Norway was one of the ones that got taken advantage of that as well too. Does that make
And
sense?
yeah, makes sense. Yes, 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 yes. And
So
and the other countries like France, for instance, that has nuclear power. 70% of France is nuclear energy, and Germany is going back to coal. So this equation cannot make sense for me. For neighbors with so different vision. Why? Why?
well, let me throw a bigger squirrel in your engine about France. France has 54 nuclear reactors, but yet they're only running at 25% capacity because they have spent no money on maintenance.
Oh my God.
So, because of the renewable energy targets that they were trying to hit, everybody looked at France as the clean energy experts,
Mhm.
and they were. But their price for energy has been going up as they're trying to move closer to renewables. I love renewables. I love wind. I love solar if they're sustainable. That means sustainable without tax incentives, without higher prices. Hey, let's talk about it. And I think that that's what people need to do is have that energy plan.
Mhm.
And so France has really not helped Europe because before they were exporting electricity. They had extra capacity with those nuclear reactors. The United States has 92, I think 92. We're not building them again, and we're years away from even trying to do this again. Copenhagen Atomics
Ah,
is really cool. Tom, I believe it's Tom. I have to. I interviewed him, Armando, and you would
oh,
love.
Kirkman.
Yes, no, not Kirkman, the CEO of
Tom,
uh,
state.
Copenhagen, Copenhagen Atomics,
Yeah, I saw this interview.
and he is building modular reactors, and it's very soon that they're going to start thorium reactors that can be built and they can ship 300 a year, and they're portable, the size of a shipping container. They can be dropped off at a coal plant and use the coal infrastructure and remove those. That is the most brilliant idea. Armando, how cool is that? You got nuclear, and the thorium reactors can use nuclear waste. Wow.
Stuart, what do you prefer? Renewables like wind and solar with intermittence, or nuclear with the risks and everything that they talk about? What do you prefer?
I
Or
prefer
both?
both. I'm
Ah,
going to stick with all forms of energy.
perfect.
I think we need wind, solar, coal, but clean coal. And there is clean coal. You can scrub it. You can. Oil and gas are by far the United States has reduced its emissions better than any other country in the world because the EIA put out a report in January and said because of natural gas. Oh,
Interesting.
in the
Oh,
last
because technologies that are being applied to remove
no,
CO2?
because coal plants are being replaced by natural gas plants. Oh, not because of renewables.
Oh my God, this is a fantastic information.
No. Now, Armando, in areas where it makes sense, like Hawaii, they have to import all forms of energy. Wind and solar in Hawaii make sense. Absolutely wonderful sense. Energy storage, and I think we're a little off topic, and I'm so sorry.
No, it's fantastic. Please go
Uh,
ahead.
in Texas, ERCOT is they have three main sections in the U.S. for power grids. And David can correct me on this. David, I love David. He is so smart. David Blackman.
Yeah, it's great.
I want to grow up to be like David Blackman someday. So, you know, uh, I don't think I could ever get that smart. So,
Yeah,
but ERCOT is one of three main divisions of energy grid in the United States. ERCOT is looking at adding storage, which is a great thing to help mitigate ups and downs. So I'm all in. But Armando, I want to give a shout out to Frere Battery out of Norway because they're the only ones that are building recyclable batteries right now for energy storage for big energy plants. So I'm a big recycler. I'm a big, let's use natural gas from waste. You know, the folks like Green Lily Energy are making natural gas, renewable natural gas from waste dumps. How cool is that? I'm all about the environment and energy poverty. Did I
your
answer your
your
question?
your concept is very interesting because we need all energies in different ways, but we need
Yes.
all of them. This
Yes.
is a great conclusion. Yeah.
And I don't care, but my take is we have to deliver the lowest cost kilowatt per hour to all people of the planet to eliminate energy poverty through development of the energy that has the least impact on the environment and is sustainable through market prices. Oh, you take a look at that one statement that I like as my quote, what do I do for energy? You have to not print money. You cannot print money. You have to be able to give the consumers reasonable energy prices. You have to use good energy policies to not pollute. Let's give you a pollution, and that is taking critical minerals from the Congo in children.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So, Armando, I will stand up on anybody's stage, on anybody's topic, and I'll say that sentence again and say, can your power supply do this?
Yeah.
Can your energy project do this? If yes or no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
And,
Data.
and
Yeah.
I think that answers your question on what is my belief on what kind of power we want to use, right?
It's right. Yeah. So that's. But there is a question that I have for you: the
Okay.
climate emergency. What? How do you see this climate alarm?
Um, the climate alarmists are religious and they do not want to hear facts.
Mhm.
You know what? I love the oil and gas people around the world because they will talk. They will say, "Okay,
They are
great."
open to.
They're open to it. In fact, like Occidental Petroleum has now started a huge chunk getting into a $4 trillion marketplace for carbon capture. Yay! Let's do carbon capture. But on the other hand, if they are protesters, which I get tickled at the protesters, the climate activist protesters that glued their hands to roads. Did you see the article this past week? It was this weekend. Two people glued their hands in Europe to the road and had to have their hands amputated because it was cement. And so they lost their hands
I
because
didn't
they
see
were
that.
dumb enough.
Oh my God.
So, Armando, You got an iPhone?
Yes,
Okay. You got computers?
yes.
Okay. Your staircase behind you? How much of that, your food, is brought to you by oil and gas? 2% has only been renewable.
Yeah. Only for energy, not to products or, yeah.
So, anyway, I think that they're a religious group of people that are misguided and need to understand. Now,
And putting fire. Yeah.
in Armando, what I'm seeing is a combination of people waking up to the climate alarmist for the first time in years. And I want to say this, and then I want to ask you a couple questions on this. And a podcast host to a podcast host, and I need to ask you questions. Um, in the ESG financial front, you take a look at BlackRock lost $1.7 trillion last year in the first half of the year. The energy hypocrisy is that BlackRock has been investing in oil and gas. They've just sold a pipeline out of the Middle East to try to clean up their books a little bit. I got a question. I didn't see it on a lot of the reports in BlackRock. They even had a pipeline over there. So, so you take a look at the ESG investors, Shell, and you take a look at Total Energy. My French is terrible, but Total Energy and all those, Exxon, BP, they're all migrating back to increasing their oil and gas development funds, their capex, and they're reducing their um, paying out for renewable projects. Why?
They are moving back.
Because the investors are demanding their money.
Oh,
So if you take a look at investors demanding their money back, we have a recession because of printing money around the world. The investors are demanding their money and they're tired of the paying for the ESG funds. And so then you have, not only do you have that awakening among the investors and the lack of money is now, I'm seeing a wakening up of people going, wait a minute, the climate crisis is full of hypocrisy and possibly may even be a farce. Take John Kerry. He went over to China. Oh my goodness. I remember sitting in front of a TV watching John Kerry talk in front of Congress about Vietnam vets. And my dad was over in Vietnam in a fighter being shot at. Do you think I'm real interested? Okay, I just side regressed. Anyway, John Kerry went to China to try to talk China into not producing 2 coal fire plants a week in China. So the answer is, I think between the money happening first and then the other people, it's bleeding over, that I think that there is an awakening going on, and that the climate activism folks are finally going, I can either lose a hand, while I'm putting my hand on the pavement being stupid, or I can kind of go, I can't afford energy. What do you think?
I think that people are looking for their interests and
Yep.
not for the good for the country of the world population. They are seeing the most benefits they can take, and this is a big problem. But it's not only for John Kerry. Is from Ursula von der Leyen,
Yes.
Antonio Guterres, all of these people. I think that they are in a group of decision that's not to be benefit to the world, is benefit for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Armando, you nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. People, it's like you and I talked about just a second ago. People don't care about the energy poor, the energy poverty going on in the world. It drives me nuts. I've helped the homeless folks a lot in Oklahoma City for years. And it breaks my heart that you have homeless, you have energy poverty, you have energy bringing up people. Take Pakistan. Pakistan, oh, kids were carrying bags of natural gas. And then they didn't even get an LNG shipment in because it was stolen by another group in Asia. And they've got energy poverty in Pakistan, and it breaks my heart for all the folks in Pakistan. Does that make sense?
Impressive. It's impressive. How can these people do things like that, sir? There's no words. But let's go to the conclusions.
Okay.
Let's see if you agree with me. First, Stuart Turley said that's not likely we can remove sanctions very fast. Second, Nordstream will be still without working for a long time.
Exactly.
Ukraine and Russia, they cannot sign a peace agreement because other force
Right.
do not allow them. We need all energies.
Yes.
And we need to take care of the climate without alarmism.
Right. You nailed it. See, we just had a 41-minute conversation, and you could have ended this, and anybody listening to this is going to go, Armando or Stuart? I'm going to take Armando because you nailed it, Armando.
No.
Thank you so much.
But people see, this is my guru, Stuart Turley. He's an intellectual sponsor for the group of energy transition with Gustavo Robichet of Catholic University in Rio de Janeiro. So, so many thanks. I'm very proud to have you here in my podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And as soon as this is published out, I'll have my team share it, and we'll try to get the word out for you, because you, Armando, are making a difference around the world. I see your reports on how many people around the world your podcast is being downloaded in, I believe it's 62 countries right now. So you're also on track. You're a major contributor in the Sandstone group. We are hitting 1 million downloads as a group, I think in September. Wow. So you are an important part of that.
I'm your friend. Count me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Armando.
It was a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
We will soon. Bye-bye.